but a guy had to be removed yesterday from the Annika Golfing Pro-Am that featured Caitlin Clark playing in the actual Pro-Am, and the celebrity caddies were Sophie Cunningham, Lexi Hall. They had to get
Okay, this is wild. Security had to remove a guy from a golf tournament. But here's the plot twist. This wasn't just any guy, and you absolutely will not believe this story. Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham were just enjoying a chill day at a golf tournament, minding their own business, when suddenly, things took a crazy turn. Security had to step in and literally escort someone off the course. But here's the real kicker. This wasn't just an over-the-top fan making a scene. What actually went down at the Annika Pro-Am exploded from simply awkward to straight up wild in seconds. And let me tell you, the details that came out after the incident are somehow even crazier than the moment itself. Seriously, have you ever seen someone get kicked out of a sports event? What happened? Drop your wildest stories in the comments below.
Caitlin Clark's Pro-Am interrupted by man claiming to be Sophie Cunningham's boyfriend. Wow. Wow. A man appearing to be in his 70s and claiming to be the boyfriend of WNBA star Sophie Cunningham was escorted off the grounds of the Pelican Golf Club during Caitlin Clark's Pro-Am round after apparently being the victim.
So, picture this. Caitlin Clark, Sophie Cunningham, and Lexi Hull are just chilling at the Pelican Golf Club for the Annika Pro-Am. It's supposed to be this super relaxed day, golf celebrity spotting, all good vibes with the fan. Clark is out there playing, while Sophie and Lexi are totally decked out in their matching fever gear, expertly caddying. Everything's wholesome, everything's fun, right? Well, until out of nowhere, some guy in the gallery starts absolutely screaming Sophie Cunningham's name, not just once, but over and over again, so loud that security immediately zeroes in on him. And get this, when they finally go over to figure out what the heck is going on, he drops an absolutely unhinged, totally unbelievable claim. He insists he is Sophie Cunningham's boyfriend.
According to the Daily Mail, Cunningham, who was among the celebrity caddies for the her Indiana Fever teammate, was walking the 10th fairway when the man shouted for her several times, calling her, quote, Soph. Cunningham, 29, ignored the calls. Two members of the Bel Air Police Department were assigned to the group for security. One stopped the man, demanding to see his driver's license and taking a photo to identify him. Although he complied, he told the officer it was not necessary.
Let that sink in for a second.
Okay, let that sink in for a second. We're talking about a man who looks to be in his 70s on a golf course, full-on screaming for a 29-year-old professional basketball player, and flat-out insisting to actual police officers that they're dating. The Bel Air Police Department, who were literally assigned to that group for security, immediately stopped him and asked for his ID. The guy actually complied, but then, here's the kicker, he told the officer checking his ID that it wasn't even necessary because, and I cannot stress how completely insane this is, he's with Sophie, as if that one sentence would magically make everything clear and the cops would just apologize for bothering him. You have to understand the level of delusion here.
When he produced messages from social media accounted purporting to Cunningham's, the officer told the man he was likely being...
But here's where it gets so much worse, and frankly a bit heartbreaking. When the officers pressed him about this supposed relationship, the man actually pulled out his phone and started showing them messages from a social media account he genuinely truly believed belonged to Sophie Cunningham. And this, my friends, is exactly where this whole bizarre incident takes a sharp turn from just weird to absolutely tragic. He had sent this fake account almost $2,000 in gift cards. Yes, you heard that right, $2,000. He honestly believed that Sophie Cunningham, a professional athlete with major endorsement deals and a WNBA salary, was desperately in need of iTunes cards, or whatever random gift cards these catfishers were running their scam with.
Man said he had sent his, quote, girlfriend almost $2,000 in gift cards through the account. This old man thought Sophie Cunningham was actually talking to him.
The officer on scene had the incredibly tough job of explaining to this man that he was being scammed, that the account wasn't real, and that Sophie Cunningham was absolutely not his girlfriend and had never ever asked him for money. But here's the kicker. The guy simply wasn't buying it. He kept insisting he just needed to talk to Sophie, convinced that she'd verify his story, because in his mind, this was all just one massive misunderstanding that would clear up as soon as Sophie confirmed they were together. The sheer level of denial needed to hold on to that belief, while police are literally escorting you off a golf course, is utterly staggering. A sheriff's golf cart eventually showed up, because of course, that's how you get removed from a golf event, and they started loading him in. As he's climbing into the cart, he's still protesting, shouting things like, "So what? You're going to eject me for speaking to my girlfriend?" Acting like the police were the unreasonable ones in this whole scenario. Then, as they're driving him away, he's still calling out, "If I could just speak to her," as if simply getting closer would somehow make his delusion real. Now let's pivot for a second and talk about what Sophie Cunningham was dealing with through all this. She's out there trying to caddy for her teammate, have some fun, and engage with actual fans, and then some random stranger starts screaming her name, claiming to be her boyfriend, all while security is scrambling to intervene. That's not just annoying, that's genuinely scary, because catfishing scams that morph into in-person confrontations can turn dangerous incredibly fast. The fact that this particular guy seemed more delusional than actively threatening is honestly a stroke of luck, because it easily could have gone down a lot differently. Sophie, she handled it absolutely perfectly. She completely ignored him, didn't engage, didn't try to explain, didn't give him any attention whatsoever. She just kept walking and let security do their job. Folks, that is the absolute correct response when someone you don't know is claiming to have a relationship with you. Zero acknowledgement, because engaging at all, even to deny it, hands these people exactly what they crave, direct interaction with their target. But what's even crazier, and frankly the absolute worst part about this entire situation, is how incredibly common these scams have become. According to The Athletic, which recently did a deep dive into catfishing schemes targeting athletes, this happens constantly. Fans get tricked into believing they're communicating with their sports heroes, and then they're manipulated into sending payments, usually through cryptocurrency or gift cards. Scammers create incredibly convincing fake accounts, using photos stolen from the athletes' real pages, and they specifically prey on lonely or vulnerable people who desperately want that attention to be real. Members of the LPGA Tour especially have been heavily targeted by these scams. Scott Stewart, who works for a security firm that helps the LPGA, told The Athletic that people regularly show up at tournaments genuinely believing they've paid for private dinners with a player. But here's where it gets even darker. Some victims show up completely enraged, wanting to confront the athlete because they think the athlete personally scammed them and kept their money. They don't believe it was a fake account. They think the actual player took their cash and then ghosted them. Can you even imagine being Sophie Cunningham and having to constantly worry that some stranger might show up hostile because they were scammed by someone pretending to be you? That's not just annoying, that's a legitimate safety concern. These athletes have absolutely zero control over fake accounts using their names and images, but they're the ones left to deal with the fallout when victims come looking for answers, or worse, confrontation. And the technology making these scams even more insidious? It's evolving at warp speed. AI voice cloning means scammers can now make it sound like the actual athlete is talking to victims. And video deepfakes are becoming scarily convincing. It's getting harder and harder to tell what's real from what's fabricated, so these elderly or vulnerable targets genuinely believe they're in relationships with these athletes, because the evidence looks completely legitimate. Photos, messages, voice notes, all but convincing enough to completely drain a bank account. And look, it's easy to mock someone for falling for this stuff, but elder fraud is a massive problem. Older generations grew up in an era where if someone called claiming to be from the electric company, it probably was the electric company. They simply didn't develop the skepticism required to navigate modern scam culture. So when a social media account with Sophie Cunningham's face starts messaging them and building what seems like a relationship, many simply don't have the tools to recognize it as a fake. That doesn't make them stupid, it makes them victim. The fact that this guy was 70 years old and genuinely believed he was dating a 29-year-old WNBA player he'd never actually met, that's just incredibly sad. He spent $2,000 on gift cards for someone who doesn't even exist. He showed up at a golf tournament expecting his girlfriend to be thrilled to see him, and instead he got escorted off the property by police while everyone watched. That's a rough day by any measure, regardless of how delusional the thinking that led him there. But from Sophie, Caitlin, and Lexi's perspective, this was a massive disruption to what should have been a fun charity event. They're trying to raise money for a good cause, engage with legitimate fans, and simply enjoy some time away from the intense basketball grind. Then security has to step in because someone in the crowd is causing a major scene that completely pulls attention away from the actual event and instantly creates an uncomfortable atmosphere for everyone involved. What's even wilder is that this all happened right after Sophie accidentally hit a spectator with an errant shot. That moment was hilarious and genuinely wholesome. Sophie buried her face in Caitlin's shoulder in embarrassment, then immediately ran over to hug the guy she hit, took pictures with him, and even signed the ball. That's a classic heartwarming sports moment that everyone enjoyed. Then like an hour later, they're dealing with someone getting removed by police. The emotional whiplash of going from lighthearted fun to a legitimate security concern is just jarring. This catfishing element also starkly highlights how bizarre fame has truly become. In the social media age, athletes have always dealt with obsessed fans, but the illusion of personal relationships enabled by social media creates situations where people genuinely believe they have intimate connections with celebrities they've never actually met. Add in scammers actively exploiting that delusion for financial gain, and you get scenarios where someone shows up at a golf tournament claiming to be Sophie Cunningham's boyfriend. What makes this particularly insidious is that the athletes themselves have absolutely no way to prevent it. Sophie cannot stop someone from creating a fake account using her photos. She can report it, sure, but 10 more pop up immediately. She can post warnings on her real account, but the very people being targeted often don't follow her real account. They only interact with the fake one, so she's powerless to protect her own image or prevent innocent people from being scammed in her name. That's frustrating and violating in ways most people don't even consider. The security response here, though, was completely appropriate and professional. The Bel Air police officers assigned to the group handled it quickly and discreetly. They identified the guy, determined he wasn't an immediate threat, calmly explained he was being scammed, and then removed him from the premises without creating a bigger scene. That's exactly how a situation like that should be managed. No escalation, no drama, just efficient problem solving that prioritized everyone's safety. But the fact that this level of security is even necessary at a charity golf event says something profound about where we are culturally right now. Caitlin Clark can't even play golf without police escorts because her popularity is so massive that crowds become utterly unmanageable, and situations like this are just a regular occurrence. That's the harsh trade-off of fame at her level. You get the endorsements and the platform, but you completely lose the ability to exist in public spaces without extensive security infrastructure. And poor Caitlin, she's just trying to work on her golf game and support a good cause. She probably heard the commotion, saw security moving in, and thought, oh great, here we go again, because this is her new reality now. Every single public appearance comes with the very real possibility that someone will do something wild that requires immediate intervention. That's absolutely exhausting. There's no off switch. Even at a golf tournament, you're on high alert. Oh, and get this, the other guys who pretended Sophie's ball hit them because they wanted attention from her. That's also peak modern sports fandom right there. She actually hit one person, but several others dramatically fell down, hoping to get the same sympathetic treatment. That's honestly pathetic, but also kind of funny in a sad way. Everyone's so desperate for a moment with these athletes that they'll literally fake injuries for a photo. The thirst is real, and it's deeply embarrassing. What this entire incident really exposes is just how incredibly vulnerable athletes are to this kind of harassment and exploitation. They can't control who uses their image. They can't prevent scammers from targeting vulnerable people in their name. They can't stop delusional individuals from showing up at public events with completely fabricated stories about their relationships. All they can do is rely on security, try to ignore the chaos, and honestly just hope nobody gets hurt. The fact that The Athletic felt compelled to do an entire investigation into catfishing scams targeting athletes shows just how widespread this problem has become. These aren't isolated incidents anymore. It's a systematic issue affecting athletes across multiple sports, with serious financial and safety implications that leagues and security firms are actively scrambling to address. And there's no easy solution, because the scammers are always evolving their tactics to stay one step ahead of prevention efforts. For Sophie Cunningham specifically, this has to be incredibly unnerving. She's out there trying to live her life and build her career, and strangers are creating fake versions of her to defraud innocent people. Then those victims show up at her workplace demanding answer. That's not just an annoyance, it's a legitimate threat to her peace of mind and potentially her physical safety, because while this particular guy seemed harmless, the next one might not be. The big lesson here is that fame in 2025 comes with entirely new complications that previous generations of athletes never had to navigate. Michael Jordan never had to worry about deepfake videos or AI voice cloning. Serena Williams didn't deal with catfishing scams creating fake relationships in her name. Modern athletes face threats and violations that are completely new, and the systems to protect them are still desperately trying to catch up. So yeah, what should have been a fun charity golf event turned into a serious security situation because scammers are out here ruining everything. Sophie Cunningham handled it absolutely perfectly. Security did their job flawlessly, and hopefully that guy learned a very hard lesson about internet scams. If you want more no-fluff sports content like this, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. And hey, have you ever been scammed online? Drop your story below. I want to hear it.